There's a specific kind of loneliness that only people with chronic insomnia understand. It's not the loneliness of being alone, it's the loneliness of being awake while the entire world sleeps, of carrying dark circles that concealer can't hide, of hearing, "Have you tried chamomile tea?" for the 1,000th time and swallowing the response you'd actually like to give. You've researched insomnia medication. You've read about the connection between anxiety and insomnia, between depression and insomnia, as if naming the problem were the same as solving it. The psychology of sleep explained REM cycles, sleep hygiene, blue light from devices. You followed all the rules, and still at 3 a.m., your brain keeps running like it has a deadline to meet. Why? Here's what no one told you. Your insomnia isn't a malfunction. It's a signature. The signature of someone who's been through things most people will never understand. You're not broken. Your brain adapted. If you're someone who overthinks, feels deeply, and struggles with sleepless nights, this channel is your space. We go beyond generic advice and dig into the real science behind who you are. Today, we're breaking down a powerful concept that research is just beginning to validate. If you've experienced intense adversity, trauma, loss, abandonment, challenges that seemed endless, there's a high probability you've developed a rare personality type. A personality marked by heightened resilience, sharp perception, and insights most people simply can't access. And here's the connection that changes everything. Insomnia often accompanies this profile, not as a curse, but as a signal. A signal of a brain that doesn't shut off because it's processing the world at a deeper, more analytical, more aware level than average. Your weirdness is a different kind of intelligence. Let's start by dismantling a narrative you've probably internalized, that your insomnia is a defect, that being awake while the world sleeps means something is wrong with you. That's a convenient story for people who've never had to think deeply about anything. A 2024 study published in BMJ Public Health and reported by The Guardian, involving over 26,000 participants, found that people with evening chronotypes, night owls, show stronger cognitive performance on intelligence tests compared to early risers. Not equal, stronger. The research was conducted by Imperial College London, led by Dr. Raha West. This isn't isolated. A 2009 study by Satoshi Kanazawa, published in Personality and Individual Differences, established a direct correlation. Individuals with higher cognitive ability tend to prefer later hours. The evolutionary explanation is fascinating. Our ancestors who could stay alert at night, minding hour while others slept vulnerable, developed enhanced cognitive capabilities to navigate darkness, identify threats, and solve problems under adverse conditions. You don't have insomnia because you're defective. You have insomnia because your brain operates on a different system, one that evolution reserved for the most adaptable, the mind that won't shut off. People with this rare personality type use sleepless nights in ways most people don't understand for advanced metacognition. Metacognition is essentially thinking about your own thinking. It's the ability to observe your mental processes, analyze them, reorganize them. Ever caught yourself talking through problems during insomnia? Reviewing arguments, formulating responses, organizing ideas? That's not dysfunction. According to neuroscience research, internal dialogue is a powerful cognitive tool that facilitates complex problem solving. You're literally using your brain more sophisticatedly. And that procrastination you beat yourself up about? A study by Jahai Sheen and Adam Grant, published in the Academy of Management Journal, found something counterintuitive. Moderate procrastination is associated with greater creativity. What you call putting things off is actually cognitive incubation. Your brain is processing information in the background, making connections that a rushed mind would never achieve. Adversity is adaptation. Here's the element that connects everything: trauma. Not the romanticized trauma of movies, but real trauma. Neglect, loss, constant pain, the feeling of never being enough. These experiences don't just hurt, they reshape neural architecture. When you go through intense adversity, your brain develops more complex processing circuits. You learn to anticipate, analyze, interpret. Your amygdala, the region responsible for threat detection, becomes hyperactive, and that hyperactivity doesn't shut off at night. It keeps working, scanning, processing. Insomnia, in this context, isn't a disease. It's a byproduct of a brain that was forced to evolve faster than normal. A brain that turned trauma into cognitive capabilities, but pays a price in sleep hours. Introversion and selective solitude. If you've been through a lot, there's a very high chance you've learned something most people never internalize. Solitude isn't punishment, it's preservation. We live in a culture that pathologizes introversion. You should get out more. You need to socialize. It's not healthy to be alone. These phrases are repeated as absolute truths by people who never had to rebuild themselves after being broken. Research published in Psychology Today explains that introversion isn't a social deficiency. It's a neurophysiological energy preservation strategy. Introverts process social stimuli more intensely. 1 hour of conversation for you equals 3 hours for an extrovert. Not because you're weak, but because you're capturing more information, processing more nuance, spending more cognitive resources. Preferring to stay home isn't being antisocial. It's being strategic. Studies in behavioral psychology have shown that people with high autonomous functioning, those who don't depend on external validation, show intrinsic motivation to seek solitude, not as escape, but as conscious choice for self-development. Introverted brains show differentiated activity in the prefrontal cortex, the region associated with deep thinking and reflection. Without adequate alone time, sensory overload occurs, manifesting as irritability, anxiety, and yes, insomnia. Quality over quantity in relationships. This rare personality prefers a few deep friendships over many superficial connections. This isn't accidental. Past trauma teaches, brutally, that not all connections are safe, that people can hurt, that vulnerability can be exploited. So you develop a filter, a rigorous selection system that most people never needed to build. You're not hard to get to know. You're selective because you learned, the hard way, the cost of trusting the wrong people. While others accumulate hundreds of friends who will disappear at the first difficulty, you cultivate relationships that actually sustain. Social dynamics and self-protection. If you survived adversity, you developed something most people don't have. A toxicity detector calibrated by experience. According to clinical psychologist Dr. Carla Manley, who specializes in narcissistic relationships and emotional manipulation, covert narcissists and emotional vampires operate through specific patterns. Initial love bombing, followed by gradual devaluation, blame shifting, and gaslighting. They exploit vulnerabilities, especially in empathetic people who've suffered and therefore tend to give second chances. Here's the hard truth. People who've been through trauma frequently attract emotional predators, not because they're weak, but because they carry deep empathy that predators identify and exploit. You know what suffering feels like, so you tolerate behaviors others would reject immediately. But here's where most people get it wrong. They assume their instincts are paranoia. They override that gut feeling because they've been told they're too sensitive or reading into things. They give the benefit of the doubt to people who don't deserve it. The same experience that makes you vulnerable also gives you the potential to be immune. If you survived adversity, your threat detection system is more developed. You notice microexpressions, inconsistencies in speech, that inexplicable feeling that something is off. The work isn't learning to detect danger. You already do that. The work is learning to trust what you already perceive. The problem of being too nice. Research in social psychology has shown that emotional control is more effective for self-protection than trying to read others. You can't control whether others try to manipulate you, but you can control how you respond. People who've been through adversity often develop a dangerous pattern, being too nice as a survival mechanism. If you were neglected, you may have learned that being useful was the only way to receive attention. If you were abused, you may have learned that pleasing the abuser minimized harm. These patterns persist into adulthood, making you an easy target. The hard truth? Excessively available people get devalued. Not because they're bad, but because human psychology is wired to value what's scarce. By establishing clear boundaries, you don't become cold. You become respected. The nighttime review. During insomnia, your mind naturally reviews past interactions. You analyze conversations, identify inconsistencies, recognize patterns you didn't notice in the moment. This can feel torturous, but it's also retroactive self-protection. Instead of fighting this process, channel it. Use sleepless nights to consciously analyze relationships. Who left you drained? Who made you feel like you're never enough? Who always has an excuse but never takes responsibility? Your brain is already doing this work. The difference is making it intentional. Strategic composure, the ability to not react impulsively, to observe before acting, to maintain calm when others expect you to explode, is a skill that people with this rare personality develop naturally. That learning, which came with pain, is now a competitive advantage in a world full of people who can't control their reactions. Personal optimization. Science. That actually works. This isn't a channel for cheap motivation. We're not going to tell you to wake up at 5 a.m. or visualize success. Here are evidence-based strategies that work with your brain, not against it. The dopamine redirect. According to a 2024 article in Psychology Today titled "The Truth About Dopamine in Your Brain," dopamine isn't simply the pleasure neurotransmitter. It's the neurotransmitter of anticipation. Your brain releases dopamine not when you get the reward, but when you anticipate getting it. If your nights are marked by negative rumination, reliving traumas, anticipating disasters, your brain is in a negative anticipation loop that sabotages sleep. The solution isn't trying to stop thinking, impossible for brains like yours, but to redirect the anticipation. Before bed, identify something specific you're genuinely looking forward to tomorrow. Not an obligation dressed in forced positivity, but something real. It can be small, a specific coffee, a podcast episode, a moment of reading. By creating positive anticipation, you redirect the dopaminergic system and make the transition to sleep easier. Ancient wisdom, modern validation. Japanese culture developed concepts that neuroscience is only now validating. Kaizen, continuous improvement through small steps, is the antidote to perfectionist paralysis that feeds insomnia. Instead of beating yourself up for not sleeping, ask, what can I improve by 1% today? Ikigai, your reason for being, offers a framework for sleepless nights. Instead of wasted time, they become space to explore purpose. And Harahachi-bu, eating until 80% full, directly impacts sleep quality. Research on Okinawan longevity practices shows that heavy digestion competes for resources your body needs for nighttime regeneration. Heavy evening meals are self-sabotage. Nervous system regulation. Your amygdala is stuck in scanning mode from years of hypervigilance. Here's how to manually downshift it. The physiological sigh, 2 quick inhales through the nose, then 1 long exhale through the mouth, is the fastest way to reduce stress, documented by Stanford University neuroscience research, led by Dr. Andrew Huberman and Dr. David Spiegel, published in Cell Reports Medicine. The 5-7 breathing pattern, inhale for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, exhale for 7 seconds, activates parasympathetic response. The longer exhale is key. These won't cure insomnia, but they reduce the activation that keeps you wired. Work with your chronotype. Here's a truth that hustle culture doesn't want you to know. Forcing your body to operate against its natural chronotype is counterproductive. If you're naturally nocturnal, as the Imperial College London research suggests is common in people with higher cognitive ability, fighting it is wasting energy. Instead of trying to become a morning person, optimize your nighttime functioning. Reserve your peak hours, often between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. for night owls, for creative or deep analytical work. Use mornings for mechanical tasks that don't require insight. Insomnia isn't a problem to eliminate, it's a resource to manage. Those extra hours of nighttime consciousness can become your most productive hours, as long as you stop fighting them. Generational patterns and emotional depth. To understand your insomnia, we need to look backward, not just at your personal history, but at the generational patterns that shaped who you are. I spoke with a woman who spent 22 years believing she was fundamentally broken. Medication, therapy, sleep clinics, nothing worked long term. It wasn't until she understood her family history, 3 generations of hypervigilant women who survived war, displacement, poverty, that something shifted. Her insomnia wasn't a malfunction. It was inherited vigilance that no longer had a threat to monitor. Her nervous system was running software designed for a world that no longer existed. This is more common than you think. According to research published in Verywell Mind, childhood emotional neglect, the absence of adequate validation, affection, and attention, leaves deep marks that persist into adulthood. These marks manifest as difficulty identifying emotions, chronic sense of emptiness, compensatory perfectionism, and nighttime hypervigilance. If you grew up in an environment where your emotional needs were ignored, your nervous system learned that relaxation is dangerous. Letting your guard down meant vulnerability. Your body literally unlearned how to rest. Insomnia, in this context, is an echo of the past. Your nervous system still operating as if in hostile territory, even decades after you left it. You're not broken. You're responding logically to a history that required constant vigilance. The strength of sensitivity. Mental health research has shown that high emotional sensitivity, often pathologized as being too emotional, correlates with greater empathic capacity, creativity, and social perception. If you cry easily, if movies affect you deeply, if you absorb others' emotions like a sponge, that's not weakness. It's high emotional reactivity, a neurophysiological trait in about 20% of the population. You're processing more emotional information than most people. Of course, you have insomnia. Your brain is processing, every night, not just your own experiences, but the emotions you absorb from everyone around you. The sensitivity is both your greatest strength and your greatest vulnerability. The work isn't eliminating it, it's learning to manage it. Trauma as inheritance. Many people with this rare personality carry traumas that aren't just theirs. Family patterns of neglect, abuse, or dysfunction transmit generationally through behavioral modeling and emotional environment. You may be reliving, during your sleepless nights, fears your parents never processed. Anxieties your grandparents carried silently, patterns of hypervigilance that were adaptive for previous generations, but now manifest as chronic insomnia. Recognizing this is liberating. You're not the origin of the problem. You're the point in the chain where the pattern can finally be interrupted. Every night you spend consciously processing, analyzing, understanding, you're doing the work that previous generations couldn't. Conclusion: your insomnia isn't a flaw. It's the signature of a brain that processes more deeply, feels more intensely, and adapted to survive things that most people will never face. Your preference for solitude is strategy. Your sensitivity is depth. Your ability to detect toxicity is protection earned through experience. This channel exists for people like you, people who overthink, feel deeply, and were shaped by adversity. Here, we don't pathologize your complexity, we work with it. If this resonated, subscribe and hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. What part of this described you so accurately it felt uncomfortable? That discomfort is recognition. That's your brain saying, finally, someone gets it. See you in the next video. And if it's 3 a.m. while you're watching this, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.